So even though he had all these demons that he was fighting, I was like the apple in his eye, right? And so being around him felt good. He grabs my phone and throws it and grabs me by the arm, pulls me behind this alleyway, and grabs me by the throat, and he's choking me, saying, I'm gonna you. And I left, and I still remember the car ride, like just leaving town, looking back and thinking, there goes my entire life.
Well, Ashley, welcome to Dad Edge. You're obviously not a dad.
I hope not. I'm not confused about that. No, I am a mom.
Yeah, you are. I actually think my dog that's in the studio with us today, he's like so confused. He's like, wait a second, like this is a house of like all men, and like there's only one woman here, and you're not it. So, but so tell me about just your upbringing though, like with your own parents, and
Okay.
I would love to actually hear it, just since this is a dad show, like just relationship experience you had with your own dad.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I don't know if I've ever talked about this
Oh,
on any
all right.
podcast before, so this will be
Okay.
interesting. I have
Awesome.
talked about my dad, but not my upbringing. So, my story with my dad is so interesting and so cool. Because when I was born and I was really young, I had two older brothers, and my dad was was it 7 or 9? Both of my parents had huge families.
Oh my God.
So he and all of his brothers were constantly in and out of jail, trouble. My dad did a lot of partying, drinking, drugs. Like he has a scar on his nose from a knife fight that he was in. They were from I think it was North St. Louis.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So yeah, they were
Right.
from like a
Yeah.
rough part, like where
Yeah.
he saw murders and things like that, even just growing up. And they were a rough crew. Like, and you didn't mess with them. They were scary guys. All of them were huge and like, just intimidating, and they were a clan. So if you messed with one of them, you got the brunt from all of them. So when I was really little, despite that, he was always like such a like gentle dad. Like he was like all about me. I had like rose colored glasses for my dad. I always have. And he and my mom's relationship was terrible. There was a lot of infidelity. He was.
Did you notice that? Like,
Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah.
So, like, what did you see from a kid? Not to cut you off, but I'm curious. Like, from a kid's perspective, like, how did you know that there was things outside the relationship going on?
Because my dad, when he would come home, they were screaming at each other.
Okay.
And then he'd leave again, and he'd be gone for a while, and then we wouldn't see him. And then when he'd come back, we'd be excited to see him. They'd fight. He'd leave. So it was like this constant like cycle of him coming and going. And there was always tension. It was always, chaotic. And my brothers and I, we saw it, and there was no way around it. And eventually, they divorced. And I actually remember, even though I was little, I think I was 7 or 8 when they officially like either began the divorce or whatever it started. I remember being relieved, even as a kid.
And how old were you?
Little,
Yeah.
like between like 7 and 8 years old. I remember being
yeah.
relieved that they weren't together. Like that's how toxic it was.
Wow.
And so for a little kid to be like, oh, thank God they're not together
Especially that
anymore.
age too.
Yeah. Like I just knew. I always like knew they were not right for each other, even
Yeah.
as a little girl. But I was obsessed with my dad, and so I'd wait by the phone for his calls when I was at my mom's house, and then eventually he remarried, and my 3 siblings came into the picture. But after their divorce, my mom ended up moving to Texas, and me and my 2 older brothers ended up with my dad and my stepmom. And he completely turned his life around. He went from like partying, drinking, women, and like this dangerous lifestyle. His brother's in and out of jail. He somehow managed to stay out of it once we were in his life. But he just decided one day that he didn't want to live like that anymore. And he started going to church, bringing us to church, and he just completely changed and became a completely different person. He bought a business, completely started from scratch, and built that business up. Now he's got this beautiful 60 acres, and he built his own home, and his business is thriving, and like he just completely did a turnaround.
How old were you when that happened?
Well, it was like over the course of my life. Like, so
Okay.
From the time I was about 10 years old, everything changed. It was like a stark change. He just like decided, I'm not living like that anymore. because he wanted to be a good dad. He wanted to be a good father. And he wanted to be a good husband now that he was doing this a second time. Like, he didn't want to be that person anymore. So he just changed everything. He just said, I'm not doing it. And he didn't. He never went back to that lifestyle again. Now his siblings and things like that, unfortunately, they got older and matured a little bit, but they still struggled, and some of them still struggle with alcoholism and things like that. But I have cousins as well that struggle with those things just because of the upbringings that they had as well. And but it's interesting. Like, I think my dad is the reason why I've ended up with the life that I have, like why I've ever had any ambition at all. And I actually just told him this the other day. I said, I would have ended up just like the cousins that I have that are in and out of jail, or that have been in prison, or are struggling with drugs, if you hadn't changed your life. Do you realize that? And he was like, yeah, I do. I do realize that.
He said that. He realized that.
That was the only reason why my brothers and I didn't end up like that too. So it was a miracle, to say the least. And I'm so grateful that he made that choice, because who knows where I would be now,
How old are you now?
How old am I? 38 in a couple weeks, actually. So,
well, happy early birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm just trying to put the pieces together here. So, 10 years old, this is 28 years later. Your dad's gone through like this metamorphosis over 28 years.
Yeah.
And being 7 years old, like, I can really relate to your story, because I remember when my mom and my stepdad got divorced when I was 10. And I literally describe it the exact same way of like, they were together from the time I was 4 till I was 10. And he was like the only dad I knew. But like, that experience of him leaving, because it was horrific.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I was also like, I felt like I wanted a dad too.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Going back to that 7-year-old, 8-year-old version of yourself, when you're like, man, thank God this is over. And then like, you're at 10 years old, you start to see your dad make these changes. Did it take a while for you to, as a kid, like, I wouldn't maybe forgive him, or be like, okay, this is a fresh start and it's consistent. Like, I feel good. I feel safe with him again. Like, this is good. Do you remember about how long that took?
It was interesting, because when I was from like 8 to, we'll say 15, I never had anything to forgive him for. For whatever reason, I always viewed him as like this hero in my life, even when he wasn't like a great present father. Yeah. I actually blamed my mom for everything, even though she was the one that was having to endure all of that. I was mad at her, because in my mind as a little kid, not understanding what was really truly going on, I'm looking at her immediately yelling at my dad when he would come home, and then him leaving again. So it's, in my mind, it's her fault that he's never here. Like, it's her fault, right?
Yeah.
And she's so critical. If she was nice to him, he would want to be home. Like, that was where I was, So I actually had more conflict with my mom growing up than I did my dad, until I was about 15, 16, when I met like my abuser.
Yeah.
And then that whole dynamic just completely shifted and changed with my dad, because he went from like my father, which he was, to like the ultimate protector. And when you're 15, you think they just don't want you to have a good life. Like, they think they don't want you to have fun, or whatever it is that I had in my mind, so.
Yeah, it's like when we were kids, because I know you're a mom of a 9-year-old. Oh, God. And it's like, I remember like growing up and being like, and my mom saying things like, this hurts me more than it hurts you. And I'm like, does it? Because I think you enjoy it, right? But
that's weird. Didn't feel that way.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of truth to that. Like, I think like, wow, this is really, really hard, to tell your kid like it is, or, to course correct, or to give them the tough love or whatever. And it's just like, and I always tell my kids this too. I'm like, I know you probably think that I get like some sadistic enjoyment out of this. It's actually the total opposite. I actually loathe this conversation and me having to tell you this, because like, it's me having to do it, but I totally get it. But I want to know, what was it about your dad that made him like this hero figure? Because I think that would be really, really valuable to the audience, because like, here's a guy who's struggling, right? And here's a relationship in his life, the most important relationship in his life, that it's a struggle. And whether it's his fault or not his fault, or both of their faults or whatever, it's still a huge struggle, and it's like a crucible that we have to bear. And the thought of us as men going through a hard time and our kids viewing us as the hero is like the last thing. It's like, I am the epitome of like I am roadkill to
Yeah.
these kids.
Yeah.
And all the while, the kids are probably looking at you like you're the best thing ever.
Yeah.
But what was it? What was it about that perspective that allowed you to view him that way?
My dad was super funny. He still is super like optimistic and very positive. So even when he was at his worst, that was still his personality, right? Like, so when I would see my dad, I was the greatest thing in the world. Like I was the most beautiful little girl that ever lived. I was the sweetest little girl that ever lived. Like he just built me up so much.
Oh, I can see that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even though he had all these demons that he was fighting, I was like the apple in his eye, right? And so being around him felt good. Even if, like I could kind of like see other things. So like I said, to me, my mom was critical. To me, my mom was always nagging him, yelling at him, making him leave. And then when he would be home, he was fun and he was positive. And so I just didn't understand, So
I think this goes right in line with the quote that like people will never forget how they feel around you, right? Regardless of like if you're at your best, if you're at your worst, people remember how do I feel around this person.
Yeah.
And for you felt on top of the world. Like your dad
Exactly.
built you up regardless of the fact that he had a really strained marriage with your mom.
Yeah.
He made you feel
Yeah.
amazing. Do you remember because I want to get specific here
Yeah.
because I think it would really give guys like especially guys with daughters, like, do you remember just some of the things that he might have said or done that you're just like, oh my gosh, like the skies open up, the stars align, like this literally is the best thing ever for my dad?
I think it was just that he always, even if I felt insecure, it was like his belief in me was so strong that I could do anything and I was the smartest and I was the prettiest. And, he was always instilling these beliefs in me, even if I didn't have them for myself. And so I felt so loved by that. Like it's hard to explain, but like, it was almost like he was giving me affirmations. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like
Like
he was
an-
just pouring like words of
Yes,
affirmation and belief
yes.
into you. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like he was feeding the affirmations that I didn't know how to give myself yet, and that just made me feel really good, especially because everything else in my life was so chaotic. And I had like my older brother Eric had Tourette syndrome and ADHD really bad, and he was really mean, like so mean. I love him now. We're great. He's not mean anymore, but growing up he was very aggressive, and like that was really hard. And then my dad, would stick up for me, and yeah, for sure. I was definitely like a daddy's girl,
Yeah.
to say the least.
That makes sense.
So
I can only imagine, like, because you have two older brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my wife and I, like, we joke all the time. I was like, I think God really knew what he was doing giving me boys, because like I would be literally like, I have two nieces and one is 5, and she always comes up to me and she'll like hold my face and she's like, Uncle Larry, and I'm like, I would say yes to anything for you, like without, and my kids are just like, can I? I'm like, no.
that is literally my dad.
Oh my gosh, that's
Like
awesome.
yes, that is literally my dad. Well, our relationship was like amazing until I got a little bit older.
Yeah.
So
I'd love to talk about that a little bit more. I'm curious though. Do you know what your love language is?
I do believe words of affirmation is really important for me.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely because of that, because I am so sensitive to like harsh criticism, like any constructive criticism, love it. I'll take it all day. Give it to me. I want to hear it. If there's a harsh tone, or if someone comes at me in like a sideways, I am like, nope, I don't receive that. I just won't receive that. So yeah, I would definitely say.
So do you mind if we segue into this relationship you had at 15?
Yeah.
The relationship with your dad, you said it got more difficult after this?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but I am curious, like, this relationship you had when you were 15, was this your first love?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long did you guys stay together?
So I met him when I was about 15, about to turn 16.
Okay.
And I was with him till I was 19. And then
Wow.
it's a really wild story, but yeah.
Well, what you got? Let's hear it.
So, and this was why my relationship with my dad got difficult, because
Yeah.
we went from being super close to I was keeping secrets. And what happened was I had met this guy. He was, he was 21 and I was 15, going on 16. And because I don't even really know why. I just, the attention, I guess. Like I was kind of chunky for a little while. Like my weight fluctuated. And so the attention from an older person to me was like, oh my God, like if somebody sees me and likes me, like you've got to be kidding me. Like that made me feel so adult and like so good about myself. And it just like pulled me in really quickly. And I remember I had been like talking to him for a little while and really just falling like madly in love because it was like my first everything. I had never even really, I think I'd maybe kissed one boy at this point. So I eventually told my dad, and he was like, okay, well, I have to meet him. He was not happy about it. He was not happy about it at all.
Because you told him about the age thing, I guess, right away.
He did not like that, which
Right.
I'm 15, so I'm thinking, 16 at this point by the time I
Right.
tell him. And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, he's going to come here and meet me. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be, right? Naturally, as I would hope any father would say. And he comes and meets my dad, and my dad sends us off, and I'm thinking everything's great. We go on this date, and I have the time of my life, and I'm like so in love. And I come home, and my dad was like, you'll never see him again. And
Yeah. What do you say? Like, what do you see?
I don't know. I
Yeah.
still don't know.
Oh,
But
you still
obviously,
don't know? Okay.
I've never asked my dad. I actually, for the first time ever, brought that up the other day. And he doesn't even hardly remember it. It's been so long ago. But he had that instinct. He knew. Like,
It was like a dad radar.
but he didn't
type
want to be
thing.
like, oh, you're not going on the date. Like,
Yeah.
he went ahead and allowed that. But as soon as I got home, he's like, you can't talk to him anymore. Like, and he took my phone. He wouldn't let me call him or talk to him, and I was devastated. Of course, I found ways.
Right. Right.
I
Yeah.
continued dating him, just with having to lie about it, which caused so many issues because eventually that all came out, and I would get grounded again, and then I would continue to see him, and I did this for 3 years, like just the whole 3 years that we were together. It was me having to keep it a secret
Oh my God.
from my dad, and then him finding out, me getting grounded, and then doing it again. Because I was obsessed. I was literally obsessed with this guy. He was my first everything. And I think like that toxic environment of the off and on, because we would break up in between all of that too, because he was 21, he was partying. I couldn't go to bars. I couldn't do any of that. His friends were wild. He was wild. They'd go out, they'd party, they'd hook up with a bunch of girls. And here I am. This is my first everything that I've ever known. And I'm just madly in love with him and finding out all of these things that he's doing behind my back, but I don't know how to like get away from it because
So you knew like he was like.
I would find out.
Yeah.
People would tell me. And he would, do the whole, I'm so sorry. Like, I care about you so much, and then I'd forgive him, and we'd get back together, and it just got more and more toxic the longer we were together until eventually it started to become like physical. And so by that point I was about 19, and me and my dad's relationship was just demolished at that point. There was no trust at all. I didn't like him because I thought I don't know what I thought. I just wanted to be with this guy. So my relationship with him was demolished. My relationship with my stepmom wasn't great. And even my friends, like I didn't have a great relationship with many of my friends anymore because they just couldn't understand. Like there came a point when like I wasn't allowed to be at my house anymore, and I was kind of like living in my car or staying wherever I could. It started to get physical, and I knew it wasn't going to be good, but I didn't know that it would get to the extreme that it got. And there were a lot of little things, and I can maybe get to that another time, that were just like, it was like leading up to the point where it got to this. But this was the final straw before I left, was when, and by this time I'm physically, mentally, emotionally just sick. I'm just so sick, like so skinny, so traumatized at this point, but like it's this trauma bond that I don't know how to break away from. And we had broken up like a week before that. He had cheated on me again. And we were at this event. It was like an Old Settlers is what it's called. It's like a little fair in town. And there was this beer tent. We were there. All of his friends were there. They were like all hitting on me because they always did, because they didn't care, you know. And he came up and he said, you're a whore. And I was like, I had a drink in my hand and I just threw it and I went to go leave and he grabbed me by my hair. There's hundreds of people here, keep in mind. He grabbed me by my hair, started dragging me down the sidewalk. And this group of guys that I went to high school, I think they were like a couple years older than me, saw it and came running out and like pushed him off of me. And I heard them like yelling and screaming. So I took off running. I had a friend that lived really close by there that I met because he had cheated on me with her, and then we became friends.
Oh my God.
And she lived nearby there. And I was going to go to her house because it was just like across the street and down the road a little bit. And I remember I was running and I had my phone in my hand and the fair was over. So it was like pitch black except for like the street lights. And it looked like a scary movie. It was like imagine like a fair that's completely empty. There's no one there. It's just rides, just like sitting there. And I'm running down this street and I can hear someone's feet behind me. And I go to look behind me and he grabs my phone and throws it and grabs me by the arm, pulls me behind this alleyway and grabs me by the throat and he's choking me saying, I'm going to fucking kill you. And before, like, some of it's kind of a blur even still, but before, like, I could even, like, respond or react or even try to get away, that same group of guys, by, like, the grace of God, had the instinct to, like, keep following him. And so they came around the corner and all I remember, the second I saw them and he let go, I took off running again. And I remembered at one point, right as I was about to cross the street, that I remember looking back and I could see him on the ground and I could see them kicking him and I could see that his face was like bleeding. And that's like the last image that I had. And then I went to cross the street and it was so wild. I mean, it was literally like a movie. I cross the street, a cop comes pulling up. They're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, do you want to press charges? We got a call. We know what's going on. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Because
How come you think?
I loved his parents so much and they were really good people. He had a good family. He had a really good family and they didn't raise him to be like that. And so I knew that it wasn't their fault. Like, and I didn't want them to have that embarrassment and that shame, like forever, like have to carry that forever because of his mistakes. Of course, being older now, I do wish I would have, just to protect anyone else that might have ended up in a relationship with him. But I didn't know that at that time. I'd never experienced anything like that. I didn't know the repercussions of that, but I didn't want them to be embarrassed or like I just didn't want that for them. So I said no.
Like right away, you didn't. Like,
yeah, I was just like, no.
First thing that came to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I just said, no, I'm not going to. And I like, I had people that were like, you need to do that. And I just couldn't do it. And that was the moment I called my mom. She lived in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, which was like 3 hours. She had moved from Texas in the meantime and moved to Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And I just told her, like, I have to leave here. Like, if I don't leave here, either he'll kill me or I'll kill myself, because I was just like just sick. And I knew that there was no good outcome to this. Like, that if I didn't leave, something terrible, even worse, would happen. So she came and picked me up the next day and I left. And I mean, I still remember the car ride, like just leaving town, looking back and thinking, there goes my entire life. Like, everything I've ever known, every person I've ever loved, every memory that I have is just gone. Like, I have to leave it all behind because there's no other choice. Yeah. And it was, in the meantime, you know, like I said, it severed every good relationship that I had with my dad, my stepmom, my siblings even. It was a brutal, brutal time, but thank God, like, leaving and getting away from that, I was able to, like, repair all those relationships, you know? But it was tough.
I'm sure.
Especially being 19. Like, I didn't even know who I was yet.
I'm sure, yeah.
So.
I have a deep question for you. I don't know if you've ever been asked this or not, but you said it was the attention thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting, like, how your story and mine kind of align a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
mine kind of came from like a broken home right around the same time as you. And I gained weight myself growing up. Like, have you ever seen the movie Just Friends?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was definitely Chris Brander
Yeah.
growing up. Like, I was the fat guy who was in the friend zone a lot. The interesting thing though is that while physical abuse and verbal abuse was your experience, in a way, in my very first relationships that I had with girls, like right around that same age, 60, like, because that's when I like lost weight, and suddenly like I was attractive to girls, because at that point, like they were repulsed by me, and like so immediately, like getting attention like that, I was like, oh my God, this is like the best feeling on the planet. And the question I have for you is, do you think that you wanted that attention so badly because maybe that was missing at home? Because I know from my experience, like, look, I didn't know it then, but like looking back on it, I think as a guy, like I just wanted to be accepted, loved, validated in a way, like, and I was just like, I wasn't getting it at home. My mom was off dating other people. There was no man in the home, like no guy, raising me. And it was just like, I just wanted like to be loved, I think. But
so
do you think
true.
that had anything to do with that?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. There was this season, like after my dad got remarried, I went from being like the center of attention, because obviously he and my mom didn't have a good relationship. So when he was around, it was all about me.
Right.
And when he got remarried, he had to shift so much of that focus onto a family dynamic. And she got pregnant, she had kids, my 3 younger siblings. And so that relationship that was so like that I felt was so close, it just got further apart. Like we were still close, but as a kid, not as close as I would have wanted to be at all, And so I felt like there was like resentment that I even had towards my stepmom, because I felt like he loved her more, which isn't true at all. But when you're like this little kid,
But when you're a kid, that's exactly the way it feels.
Yeah.
Like almost like, not that you've been replaced, but you've been replaced.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly
like,
what it felt. I didn't like that.
Right.
I didn't like her coming in and now being like the center of attention, which technically she wasn't, but that's what it felt like as a kid. And then my mom wasn't there anymore. So I wasn't getting it from my mom, and I felt like my dad's attention was now over here. And there were even times that like, this was never probably the case, but it even felt like sometimes like he had his own family now and I was just there. Like me and my brothers were just there, and my brothers were troubled. They were very troubled, like more so than I was in different ways. So they were a handful. And
I can totally understand that. I really, really can, because like, and I think that what you're saying right now is such a powerful message for dads, especially raising daughters, to like not take your eye off that relationship and not to stop, putting your attention on that, because so like, if not, like, I mean, I'm speaking from a man's perspective, and I even needed that growing up, but I think for even a woman, like, it's like, man, like I really need that, especially if you had that and then suddenly you felt like it was kind of extracted out of your life.
Yeah.
So I totally get that. Let me ask you this. If your dad, obviously he was in a new relationship, looking back on it though, are there things that he could have done like better? Like, and let's talk to the dads in the audience right now. Like, is there things he could have done? Like, man, if he would have just done this, or this, I probably would have felt, still a certain amount of love, or, like his words of affirmation or whatever it is, like that would have made you feel seen, maybe heard, loved, all those different things.
I think what happened was my dad went from being the one giving me all that attention to wanting me to connect with my stepmom. He wanted me to connect with her. So it was like he was always facilitating ways for she and I to connect, but I didn't want that attention from her. I wanted it from him.
Yep.
And in his mind, he needed to establish a bond here. So he was more hands off. He became more hands off, like trying to kind of facilitate this relationship. And I didn't want that. Like in my mind, I felt like I already have a mom.
Yeah.
Like she may not be here, but I do have a mom and I want my dad.
Right.
Like, I like this lady. That's fine. She's fine, but that's not what I want.
Right. It's like, I don't want the we thing. I want the us thing here.
Yes. Yeah. So I think in his mind, he thought he was doing the right thing by trying to create that bond there between us. But she was also, having babies and like so busy with that. And that was her own kids. And no matter how you look at it, it's, easier to connect with your own than it is as like your stepchildren. Even if you have the best of intentions in the world, there's still a difference, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I could feel that, not because she did anything wrong or she was horrible or anything like that. None of that was true. But I was resentful because he wanted me to be close to her and I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be. I wanted to be close to him still.
Yeah.
And he was so busy because he was completely rebuilding his life and like starting over and trying to do everything different. And so his focus was like his business and just being a dad in general and being a husband and being a good husband for the first time and like, you know, having more new kids. And like, so he had so much, he was spread so thin that he really probably couldn't have even showed up in that way. And he did the best he could with what he had. Like, I still remember sitting down doing homework with him, or him doing it for me, really, if we're being honest. Getting the best essay in school because my dad wrote it for me. You know, so he was still showing up. He was still present. It just wasn't what I wanted, not in the way I wanted.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
very different. Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally get that. You know, it's funny you mentioned that because my mom, I was raised, you know, I would say half of my childhood was without a dad or a father figure, and the other half was just me and my mom.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that when there was a new guy in the picture, like I got kind of like the leftovers. I don't say that my mom, same thing. She did the best she could with what she had.
Yeah.
I think in her world, she was like, I just need to go out and find a man, like to complete this family, or to go out and date. And unfortunately,
100%.
it's really fascinating that you and I are talking about this, because I know one of the things we're going to talk about, perhaps we just talk about it next, is when someone attracts, you know, that negativity in a relationship. I saw my mom do that over and over. Like she kept attracting
the same
guy, the same
different
guy
body,
who,
different name.
Yeah, that's why I always say, I was like, it was the same guy, different face, different name.
Yep, every time.
Every time. Tell me about the pattern with that, because I think from an outside perspective, like I remember this as a kid. Like I remember being like, my mom would go from one relationship to the next. And I'd be like, I'd be like, why do you keep going for these guys? They're all idiots.
They're
like
losers.
Yeah, they're all
Everybody
losers.
sees it but you. Yeah. No, it's
but
not
like,
true.
What is that? Like, I'm curious.
I do believe, for me personally, and I have to imagine it's somewhat universal here, is that being attracted to anyone toxic, whether you're a male or female, stems from this unworthiness in you, where you feel like, I actually don't deserve better than that. Like, so do you know what I mean? I didn't know I did.
I never heard it said like that, but that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I didn't know I deserved better. The first relationship that I ever had built a foundation for me that was, this is how men are. They cheat, they lie, they gaslight, they demean, and they abuse. And even though I knew those things were wrong, it was what I was used to. It was what I knew. It was what I had already experienced. And so anyone that didn't hit me was an upgrade in my eyes. Like, and I wasn't saying that to myself, like, oh, I like him because he's not hitting me. But deep down, it was like, if they gave me any sort of positive attention at all, even if it turned bad, I was like, oh, that's okay, because, you know, in my head, I'm like, you know, he's not abusing me. He's just toxic. It's fine. And so I continued to attract those same types of guys because in my mind, I didn't know I deserved better, and I hadn't experienced better. I didn't even know what better looked like. I just knew I wasn't attracted to the super nice guys for whatever reason. And it was because if they liked me, something has to be wrong there. Because I don't even like me yet. Like, I don't really like myself that much. So why would they like me? You know, does that make sense?
It does. And what are some of the, so like, I think this term like nice guy gets kicked around quite a bit, but I am curious from your perspective, like if you think of a nice guy, what is a nice guy?
Well, it's different now than it was then.
Okay,
but
well, let's hear
I could
about
never
it
put
then.
my finger on it. I could never, and I finally put my finger on it this year. What I used to think was the nice guy was the guy that was a pushover, that would do anything for you without any boundary put in place, that hadn't really found their, like, the masculine part of themselves yet. That to me was the nice guy. So it was like, that wasn't attractive to me. I didn't want that. I don't think any woman really does.
Can you talk more about that though?
Yeah.
Like why? Like, so like,
You're like, I need to know more.
no, I'm curious about it. Cause like, we talk about this a lot in our community. In fact, like one of the books we talk about a lot in our community, we have for like 10 plus years, is No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it's written by a guy named Dr. Glover. But it's exactly that the nice guy has no boundaries.
Yeah.
The nice guy is a pushover. The nice guy will do anything for you. But the other thing too, and I'm sure you've had relationships like this, the nice guy will do anything for you, but he has an agenda.
Yeah. Oh,
and,
yeah.
And if you don't fulfill his expectations, well, then he gets pissed.
Yeah.
You know, and then he's not so nice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying about the abusive guy, because I know you've had all those extremes.
Right,
but
right.
like the nice guy is like, I'm just curious from a woman's perspective, because out of 1,300 episodes, we've talked about this topic, but not necessarily with a woman.
Yeah.
So like the nice guy, why is it even somewhat repulsive to a woman if a guy is
Because based on the things that we just said,
yeah,
the nice guy can't even care for himself. He's not even caring for himself. He's letting everyone push past every boundary, walk all over him. How can a man that won't even do that for himself do that for me? And if I'm supposed to be, or if I want to be safe and feminine with you, I can't do that if I don't feel like you're going to protect me emotionally or mentally or physically. And the nice guy can't do that because they won't even do it for themselves. So it's like the perfect example would be like you say you're out with your nice guy. I'll just keep saying that because why not? And another guy comes over and says something off the wall that's totally inappropriate. And you look at him and he's just like, he won't do nothing. He does nothing about it because he doesn't want to cause any conflict, right? Versus a masculine man that his mindset is, not only do I take care and protect myself, but there is no way someone's crossing the woman that I love, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Their first thought is going to be, I'm going to get up and I'm going to say, hey, man, like, no, not appropriate. It doesn't mean I want the guy that's going to go over and bash their head in. I don't want that either. That's the other extreme of what I've dated, but...
You don't like the bro protection?
I don't need you to go to jail tonight.
Right,
I just want to know that you've got my back.
Yeah.
I want to know that you won't let that happen, right? And that's, if you can't, like, that's just it. Like, there's a difference between a nice guy and a kind guy in my eyes. I want kind. I won't tolerate anything less than kind ever again. But I don't want the nice guy. I just don't, because they can't protect themselves,
That is so true.
Women instinctually need to feel protected.
They do.
Especially if they plan on having a family with you and a life with you. Like, instinctually, you need to feel like this person's got us. Like, this person, even if me and these kids, can't do anything to protect ourselves, that's okay because he's standing in front of us. He's there. Right? No one gets to go past these boundaries that we hold as a family because my husband's got us, right? And if you don't feel like that, just even dating a guy, it's unattractive because you don't even know that that's what's going on, but you see it, you feel it, you sense it, you watch it in interactions with other people, right? So it's not even like that's what it is, but that is what it is from a woman's standpoint.
What you just said is absolute gold.
Yeah.
I'm serious because like it has never been said like that on this podcast anyway. In those words. And I think that what you just said was so clear because it painted a picture because like we as men, I think guys, but like I think just human beings in general, we're very, very extreme.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're too nice. Okay, well, I'm going to go to this extreme over here and be really mean, right? Versus like, but I love that differentiation between nice and kind.
Yeah.
Because I think that goes a long way. Do you want to hear a really quick, funny story?
Yeah.
So like, I've had to learn that, when I was younger, lost a bunch of weight. Like I was like,
so you were probably very nice.
Oh my God. I was like
You
the
were
biggest
just, like-
pushover known to man.
Yeah.
And I remember like dating women. I'd be like, I don't care. Like I get to date somebody. Like they treat me
I'm
however
just
they
happy
want.
you like me.
I know. I'm just like happy. like you think I'm somewhat attractive. Like
Yeah.
that was like, but the funny thing is like, I learned over time that it was really, really odd and I could never figure it out. I remember like being in a long-term relationship when I was in college and we broke up.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when we broke up and she cheated on me with my neighbor in the dorm. And it was interesting because like up to that point, I just like kind of like took whatever in the relationship. She was so beautiful. And I was just like, I felt like so honored to be with her. Like, so I just was like, whatever. I will never do that again. And I made it, that was like 30 years ago and I will never do that again. And the funny thing is after that happened, she wanted to get back together and I was like, absolutely not.
Good for you.
And the most fascinating thing about that relationship was for 3 years, Like I felt like I pursued, initiated everything when it came to that. But getting back to that, like when I decided to date other people, because I was very bitter over that breakup.
Yeah.
And I was like, F all this.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm going to go out and date whoever I want. And I'm just going to like be who I am. And if people don't like it, then that's fine. And if they do, then great. And I wasn't mean to anybody, but I was like, I'm not going to be a pushover anymore.
Yeah.
And that changed everything, like
Yeah.
those boundaries. And, but the funny story I have for you. So is my oldest is 18 and I've been doing this work and marriage work now for 10 years. So it's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I see like my oldest son, he's dating this girl right now and they are so darn cute together.
Aww.
Like she loves him to death. He loves her to death, but I can see like he's really, really like laying it on, which I think that's the rookie mistake you make in your first love,
You have to do it at least once.
And like, I know we're talking about Ryan Reynolds movies. Have you ever seen the movie Waiting?
I don't know if I have.
Oh my God, you got to see that. So like,
I do love him though. He's hilarious.
But that's another movie where it talks about like this just overly nice guy. Because there's a character in that movie that's like this overly nice guy, and these girls, Anna Faris was one because she was in Just Friends, and then there's another girl. They corner this guy who's like overly nice to this other waitress, and they're like, for the love of God, stop asking if she's okay. Like, so the story is like we had homecoming, and my son's girlfriend was taking photos of me and my son. And as she's taking photos, he's like, are you okay? Are you okay? As she's taking photos, he's like, are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? Are you sure you're okay? And I looked at him, I was like, stop asking her if she's okay. And he's like, I'm like, stop. I was like, he's like, what do you mean?
She won't be if you keep asking.
I know. And you could tell every time he asked, she was like, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Like, and I was just like, stop asking her that. Like, because like it does, it gets, I love the fact that he's so observant, genuine, and he wants to check in. But when you lay it on like that, like you're right, it's very unattractive. But
because it's a submissive behavior.
Oh my God.
And men,
right? Yeah.
Women, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like if a man's submissive, everything's completely out of balance, right? And there's a difference between serving your partner and being submissive to them, right? Like a man should be serving his wife or his partner in a lot of ways, like being emotionally available. That's a way to serve her because that's what she needs, right? Like being available for her if something happens and she needs someone to be there, being able to protect her. That's a way to serve her and be there for her. But when you are submitting to a woman, suddenly she's like, oh crap, now I have to be, the masculine one. And women do that in a relationship. They go from being like feminine, sweet, naturally even submissive to suddenly they're like taking control. And you see that in those dynamics with the nice guy.
Yeah.
They always have a really bossy, like dominant,
every time,
like girlfriend that calls all the shots,
right,
that rules the roost, that does everything. And I'm not saying if that works for them, that's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but that's what happens. Like the more a man submits, the more a woman like becomes masculine and then becomes like the guy in the relationship. And again, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but that's what happens. So
can we dig a little bit deeper on this?
Yeah.
Because this is so good. We'll definitely want to get back to the other stuff, but this is really, really good because I know I think men in general just need to hear this message and they need to hear it, I think, from this perspective. Let's just talk about, I want you to go back to when you were married. Okay. You were married for almost 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
14 years. Yeah.
14 years?
No, for 10 years. Sorry.
Oh, for 10
that
years.
That does like for
wow,
10
yeah,
years.
Yeah. So for 10 years. So, and I want to talk about marriage in general, because I think that is where a lot of guys, I think a lot of relationships kind of fall into this trap.
Yeah.
Where I'm thinking of like guys in our community and even my own clients, because one of the biggest questions that I get is, what's the balance?
Yeah.
Like, what's the balance of me being kind, but not a pushover? And you gave some really great examples right there, but like, let's just take like marriage and going out on a date with your husband.
Yeah.
And I think, and this is where a lot of guys, I think, fall into this trap, because they're like, I ask guys, I'm like, well, when you ask your wife on a date, like, how do you do it? And they're like, where do you want to go? Where do you want to eat? What are you in the mood for? I was like, have you ever thought about just being like, hey, be ready by 6?
This is where we're going.
Yeah. Or just be like, be ready.
Which, by the way, women truly do love that.
And why do they?
I don't know. Because it shows leadership.
Yeah.
It shows that you have control of yourself and the things that you want. And I don't know. It's instinctual. I can't even explain it, but I prefer that.
I think a lot of guys are afraid of doing that though, because they view that as, well, aren't I being controlling?
No.
Okay.
There's a difference between assertiveness and controlling. Like being able to make decisions is being assertive. Like that's being decisive. Like that is an attractive quality. That's not the same as, no, we're not going there because I don't like it. That's where controlling is. Or no, we can't go there because your ex-boyfriend used to work there and, whatever. There's a difference. There's a huge difference. And controlling is you don't ever get to choose.
Mm-hmm.
You don't ever get to be a part of the decision making, right? That's controlling.
Okay. Yeah.
And no one likes that, right?
Right.
But saying, hey, I really want to take you out and you deserve it and I have a place set up for us, just be ready at 6. That's not controlling. That's, I'm actually really interested in you and I'm going to prove it and I'm going to show it and I'm going to go out of my way to do this so you don't have to do it,
Okay. You described this so well.
But
Like you really have.
And I know a controlling man, like I've obviously.
Right.
So it's like I know the difference now.
Which I think that's probably one of the reasons you're probably the most qualified to talk about this, because you've seen the differences.
Yeah.
Can I give you another situation?
Yeah.
Let's just talk about everyday communication, right? Just between a husband and a wife or like an intimate relationship. I'm a big fan of like, please don't ask your wife how her day was. Like just, that's a boring question.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like it's obviously you want to check in, but don't go to a default question that's not going to get you any type of connection. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of like creative questions, or like just understanding, like I'll ask my wife, like, or my kids, what's been the best part of your day, or what was something that made you laugh today, or something that happened that was unexpected, just so I can get a story and a connection. But everyday conversation, like what are some of the traits of the nice guy versus like the attractive, assertive, confident husband? Like what do those conversations look like that are different?
Well, I don't even know if it's the conversations that are different or so much as like the demeanor. So like for me, a nice guy would be the type of guy that's like, the second you walk in the door, how was your day? What can I do for you? Are you okay? Are you okay? Like, did anything, what happened? Did something happen? And you're going, no, I'm just getting home. Like, versus the healthy, whole, masculine man is like doing his thing. And then he's like, hey, you know what? Let's go sit and like just chat. Like they're intentional. It's intentional. It doesn't even matter what the conversation is, but it's not like I'm going to drop everything completely, whether I need 30 minutes to myself or not. I'm just, forget it. I don't need it. I just push it away. It's not important. How can, like, you know what I'm saying? I don't, and that's not to say there aren't times that a woman doesn't want her husband or her spouse or her partner to do those things on occasion. Like if she's had an extra bad day and she's like, hey, I just need, and they're like, oh, okay, let me drop these things. That's fine. Let's talk about it. But I don't know. I think it's the demeanor of, I've taken care of myself. I'm in a good place right now. I'm in a good space right now, and I'm going to make time for you because I can. Versus, I haven't done anything for myself. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. But I'm just going to push all that to the side to do everything for you, and then I'm going to be resentful about it later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. I know exactly what
it's
you
like
mean.
The perfect example would be, so you have kids, right? And let's say you have a stay-at-home wife, and the second you walk in the door, she knows you're just going to drop everything and turn into dad, right? You don't get any time to yourself. You haven't even had 10 seconds to like just declutter from the day, whatever your job was. And she's immediately like, can you please take these kids? Like, and I'm not saying that I don't understand that, because I've been in that position before. I'm like, oh my God, another second with my kid and I'm going to lose my mind. And I want you to take them. Yeah. I get that too. But there's also like a man that's just constantly putting every need and want and desire he has to the side just to serve you 100%. That's not even really healthy. That's not healthy at all. And it's not attractive either. So like, to me, it's like, hey, when I get home, I love you guys so much, but could you give me 30 minutes? I just need 30 minutes to decompress, to declutter my mind, to relax. I want to just take a shower and just kind of like take off work for a second. And then I'll come down. We can make dinner together. We can play with the kids. Like, that's healthy and balanced. because he's not sacrificing everything he needs to be the hero. He's doing what he needs so that he can show up fully as the hero when it's the right time. Does that make sense?
Like 1,000%.
Okay.
Yeah. But go ahead. Yeah.
But and it's not I don't think it's attractive. Every person, I've seen different relationships like this before, where the wife, the second the husband gets home, is, and again, I'm not saying I don't understand it, because I totally do. But those husbands are always bitter. They're always angry. They're always resentful. They're passive aggressive. They're in the relationship, the sex life is horrible. Versus the women that like truly like respect their husband and understand that they have needs and wants too, outside of, intimacy, but just like, if I need to decompress when he gets home from work, he probably needs it too. And if I can give him that 30 minutes, then I'll get mine too. It's like, how do you become a team? It's not attractive to just lay it all, put it to the side and just get bitter, Yeah,
it's like, how do we have this relationship of reciprocity?
Yeah.
Right, where we both state what we need. And the interesting thing though is that you're saying this, right?
Yeah.
And I know this. I mean, I've been married for 21 years, and the relationship you're talking about is definitely the one that like Jessica and I have developed, but it took a lot of time.
I'm sure.
To like find that rhythm. But we very much respect like each other's like self-care, like, hey, what do you need to be the best you?
Yeah.
And like, let's figure out how we can do that.
Communication is so important for that.
Yeah. But here's the thing that I think the wives and the women in our lives are at battle with is the fact that the guys that you're married to are at battle with themselves. Because in our world, there's a couple things going on. Number one, if we have to come home, like if I, while you're saying that, I'm sitting there thinking like, that makes so much sense. And that would probably, like, even though I do this work and I'm the guy doing this work versus like the normal run of the mill guys who don't do this work, I don't even feel good about coming home and telling Jess like, hey, I know I've been gone all day, but can you give me like 30 minutes? Like in my mind, I'm like, that is the most selfish, self-centered thing you could possibly do. But it's also, that's the dumb story I tell myself, right? But here's the other thing too. So you're at battle with that, but you're also at battle with a guy being like, how weak am I if I have to ask for that? Like, I'm not a man. Like if I actually need 30 minutes to decompress, I'm weak. I'm not a man. I'm not a good husband. I'm not a good dad if I need that. If I can't switch this thing on right when I walk in the door, something's wrong with me. Like that's literally what this relationship is at odds with, is what your perspective is, and saying that like, no, it's actually really okay if you do that. And in our mind, we're like, no, that's never okay.
No.
So how do we make that the norm? Like, actually, how do we make that into like a conversation, like where you actually just get to check in with each other? Like, there was one thing I saw on social media and I thought it was so simple and so brilliant. It was this woman talking about her relationship with her husband, and they used percentages. And when he gets home, she's like, how you doing? Where you at?
Oh,
he's like, I'm at 40 right now.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, I got you. I got the extra 60.
Yeah.
And there are some days where he'll
Who
come
was
in.
that said that? I've heard that before too, and it's so good.
It was so good. I was like, oh my God, that's gold.
It's genius.
It's genius. And there are some days where, they're both like, where are you at? And you're like, I'm at 10. Oh shit, so am I. Let's just be the best 10 we possibly
We're gonna
can.
have to collaborate here, yeah.
But at least we know where we're at, right? But like, bringing that question back to you, how do we make that conversation like more the norm?
I mean, honestly, and maybe I'm naive here, but if you really love someone, you want to do that. Like, you want to know, like, hey, if you're super duper stressed from work and you know you're not going to be your best self unless you have a shower for 20 minutes, like, if I love you, I can hear that and go, no, you need that.
Yeah.
You need that. And
In
I
fact,
want that for you.
Please go do that.
Yeah. I want that for you so that
Right.
when you do come into the kitchen, you're in a good mood too, and you're in a good place.
Right.
And you've had that time. Like, and if it's one of those deals where you have, the wife is a stay-at-home mom and she's really stressed at the end of the day, and they know like she's maxed, like maybe they don't have to have that 30 minutes right then. Maybe they can come in for 30 minutes and play with their kids and then go, okay, I'm just going to go take a shower. Give me 20 minutes. I'll be back. Or maybe they can take that time at the end of the night, like, hey, before we go to bed, I just need like 30 minutes to myself. Whatever it is, it's communication.
Yeah.
It's collaborative effort. It's how can I make sure that you're your best, and how can I make sure that you're your best? Like, you're both like monitoring each other, right? Like in my relationships, that was never the case. And I've learned that obviously as I've gotten older and I've realized what I've needed, but I've also like, it's a grace. It's a grace that you have for them that, hey, I can't expect them to come home and be Superman when he's worked for 11 hours, right? With a super stressful job. Or I can't expect her to be super mom when she's been with this kid for 12 hours and the kid's been crying and sick. Like, if you both are genuinely committed to serving the other and making sure the other's at their best place, you're both naturally going to want to do that. It becomes just like a habit of, hey, when he gets home, he goes to shower, and I'm not resentful because I know how much he needs that. And I know that when he's done and he comes back, he's going to give me that 30 minutes to go sit and do my thing while he takes care of the kids. Like, it's a collaborative effort, right? And when you care about people, you care about how they feel. You care about how they're doing, right?
That's so true.
I mean, and if that's not the case, then you have to kind of evaluate, like, if I don't naturally want that for my husband, what is it in me that's creating that? Am I resentful? Am I like upset? Do I feel like they're neglecting me in other areas? Because something else is wrong if you don't naturally want those things.
But I think there's a lot of relationships out there that don't.
I know.
Because and that's why I think it's really fascinating to talk to somebody with your experience, because I think someone with your experience, like, you know, firsthand about trauma.
Yeah.
And toxicity
Yeah.
and resentment and like, what are the rules? And by the way, if those things are happening, right, the trauma, the abuse, whether it's physical, verbal, sexual, or whatever, like, there are boundaries that are crossed.
Yeah.
It's almost like, oh my gosh, what did somebody say? Oh, I had a really good mentor of mine, and I think this kind of goes in line with like traumatic relationships, which is, don't ever say anything that can't be erased off the hard drive.
Oof.
And I was like, what does that mean? They're like, think about it. There are things that have been said to you as a kid or in a relationship. You're like, holy shit, I can never unhear that. I can never unsee that.
Yep.
It's never going away. In fact, every time I look at this person, there's
It's
probably
there.
going to be a part of me that's going to remember that.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you think that most relationships, maybe while the trauma and resentment maybe isn't extreme to where it's like abusive, like I know you experienced, but there's like micro things that happen?
I can say this as a female, as a woman. The number one thing that makes a woman feel resentful is feeling neglected. Like, if she feels like you just don't see her, you don't care about her needs, you don't care about her wants, that it's all about you. If she feels neglected by you, like you're choosing everything else over her constantly, she will be bitter, she will be resentful, and she will be passive aggressive, and she will not want to give you that time when you get home because she's already pissed off. You know what I mean? But what was the question that you had before that, though?
No, I think like, so it's kind of like it's maybe for some relationships, right? Because I know you've had like kind of like the gauntlet, right?
Yeah.
You've had like some really traumatic things happen. And I guess my question was more like while people experience that, like, it's maybe with most relationships, it's like these micro cuts. It's like these small traumatic things that happen, or like these things that are said and you're like, oh, like that really hurts. It's not devastating, but it's hurtful enough to where like that resentment starts to build.
Yeah.
And I've heard this quote too, and I don't like, and I'm fascinated just to know your perspective of it, which is, once a woman has made up her mind to complete, you know where I'm going. So you probably just answer the question. So what am I going to ask? 'Cause I think you probably know.
This is an interesting thing that you bring up. Sorry, my stomach's growling. But those micro things outside, let's just say this isn't an abusive person per se. Let's just say it's just a regular man or woman, okay, that isn't maybe the best partner in the world, and they have resentful or resentment, or they have deep insecurities, and so they're real sensitive, and there's these little micro cuts. There's these little things that they do all along the way. A woman, those things add up.
Right.
I mean, you know this.
Yeah.
Every man knows this.
Right.
Like, something you said to your wife 15 years ago that hurt her, she still remembers it. She'll never forget it. And if you aren't careful about the things that you say and the way that you say it, eventually it'll be too much. It's like a woman stacks it up. And once you reach like the final threshold and it starts to pour over, she's done. You've already lost her. You're losing her every time you dig at her. You're losing her every time you say something that you know is going to hurt her because you're angry or because you're insecure in that moment. And you think you're just angry and it's fine, I'll apologize later. But in her mind, he doesn't love me. In her mind, she thinks someone that, because this is how I felt. Like every time a negative thing was said or a spiteful thing was said or a resentful statement was made, I thought to myself, someone that loved me would never speak to me like that.
Right.
That's not okay. So that was a check. And then the next time, check. Every time you say something out of anger, resentment, or bitterness, or spitefulness, your wife, your spouse, your partner feels a little less safe with you.
And do you think it's also like when she doesn't feel seen and heard? Like where she doesn't feel listened to? Like
those are extra. Like
those,
the safety is like the foundation for a woman.
Right.
Safety first over everything, and emotionally, mentally, physically. Like a woman can almost work through anything with a man as long as she feels truly safe with him. Right. But the moment you start saying things that make her think like, that was weird. That made me feel that I didn't feel safe when he said that.
Right.
Like that makes her question who he is. Right.
Yeah.
And then, like if I'm in a relationship, well, I'll just use my past relationship for an example. Anytime that I maybe didn't feel appreciated or seen fully, it bothered me, but it wasn't a deal breaker. It bothered me, and I might say something, and then we'd work through it. It wasn't a deal breaker for me. The deal breakers for me were the petty things like, well, if I have to suffer, so do you. That hurts. That makes me feel less loved. That makes me feel like you're out to get me and that you're not here to protect me.
Like almost vindictive in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And guys have this tendency just in the moment, if they're not super regulated with their emotions or in touch with their emotions, they say little things like that and they don't even mean it. They don't even mean it in the moment. They're just saying it because it's like a natural reaction. And they could say it to one of their guy friends, and their guy friends would be like, you're dumb. And they'd move on in 5 seconds and no one cares. And you never think about it again. Yeah. But you say that to a woman who's looking at you as the person that's going to protect her and love her and guard her and your children. You say that to her. Now she's questioning you. She's immediately questioning you and your intention, whether you're married or not.
Yeah.
That
makes total sense. And I think this is where I think we kind of keep going back to like the yin and the yang, right? Yeah. No, really, because like in a guy's mind, I'll just be very honest, like in a guy's mind, I'd be like, so what do I do? Like, I mean? They're like, I can't be too nice, but I can't be like really rude. It's like, I got to be in like, but I think it really boils down to like, you tell me your opinion on this, but I think a man who has a mission and a man who has self-mastery and confidence and leadership and feels comfortable in his own skin, and by the way, who's also playful and fun, like, does that
exist? Or yeah. I mean, if it does,
but, I mean, is that like the perfect mixture that we're talking about?
Yeah, a driven man is an attractive man.
Yeah. And can you tell me why? Like, why is that? Like, because like I think like I go back to my nice guy stuff, right? Like when I was like a teenager, like I'd be like, well, if I take my eyes off her and what she needs, and I'm doing this other thing, like doesn't she think I'm like doing the wrong thing here? Which is actually the opposite. Like a woman does like a man who's driven to do something, right? But why is that? Because
it all comes back to safety for a woman. And I know that traditional values and stuff are very like skewed now, but like if a man is driven, she knows that he can provide for her family, or at least he has the desire and will do everything he can to. It doesn't mean he has to be rich. It doesn't. Most women, if they're truly like healed and evolved and healthy, and a lot of the times independent and kind of have enough for themselves, they're not looking for the richest man in the room. They're just looking for a man that has a passion or a purpose.
Yeah.
They know like they're striving to be their best. Like that's attractive. Doesn't mean he's a millionaire, but she knows that even if he has to go out and get 15 jobs tomorrow to make sure his family is eating that night, he will. That's safety. That's safety. That's if I lose my job, is our family going to be okay? Is he still going to be able to provide? Does he still have that drive to make sure his family's okay? So drive is attractive because it keeps a woman feeling like safe, you know?
Totally. Yeah, I totally
So
get
it's
that.
not about
Yeah.
like, we're not going after the Andrew Tates of the world.
Right.
We're not trying, we don't want the guy because maybe some women, but
I mean, what about Jake Paul? Like, he's like,
not for me, but he
Yeah.
just is a bit immature for my liking.
Yeah.
But no, you want to know you're safe.
yeah. You keep coming back to this safety aspect, which I love, by the way, because, you know, in our community, like the guys in the dad edge will be like, hey guys, what's a woman's 3 basic needs to feel seen, heard, and safe, right? Those 3 things, but safety among
I think
all.
safety first.
Yeah, because what about so a man with a mission, you know, a man who's got drive,
Yeah.
that's attractive. I think another one, and I've seen this in my community, and I've seen this just with dads in general, and I saw this within myself for a long time, and I still have this trait if I don't pay attention to it, is being playful.
Yes.
Like literally just being like, I think guys take things so damn seriously, and we're so quick to just be like, oh, you know, it's like, it's not going my way, or it's like, or like just being playful.
Yeah.
Like, I think that playful aspect is something that a woman truly wants to see. Not playful as in like, do you not take anything seriously? Because that's not attractive
No,
either.
it's not either.
But just being able to be like, I mean, I know for a fact one of the coolest things that Jessica finds attractive in me is when I'm like wrestling with the kids, or like out there throwing the football with them, or like I take them to go do something, like, or I'll be like, hey, you go get out with your girlfriends, we're gonna have a guys' night, you know, stuff like that, to where like that playfulness. But can you talk about like, why is it attractive, no matter how long you're in a relationship with someone, that a man has a sense of humor, that he's playful, he doesn't take life too seriously, but just seriously enough? What's the balance with that?
Because when you are playful, it signals to a woman that she can be submissive. And what I mean by that is
Really?
that, yes, because she can let down her guard. She doesn't have to be perfect, poised. She doesn't have to like be this, you know, unimaginable, unattainable thing, right? When like, have you ever been in like a room with somebody that's very intimidating, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
And you immediately like are like, you're like your best self.
Yes.
Guards up.
Yeah.
You know, you're straight faced. You're paying attention. You're very professional. It's not fun being
It's
within a
not
relationship
fun.
with someone like that, because then your guard is constantly up. But did I say
Right.
the right thing? Did I do the right thing? And you may think that just because you're married to someone that's not the case, but it is still the case. Like, I have been in a relationship before with a guy that was just so serious all the time. I couldn't even have fun myself. Even
Yeah.
me having fun made him uncomfortable. So I wasn't me. I just shut off who I was for a really long time to be the perfect, you know, the picture perfect, poised all the time woman that I'm not. Like, and I can do that too, but there's every woman like has that playful side to them. They want to laugh with you.
Right.
They want to feel comfortable with you and safe with you. And again, it comes down to safety. Like, if you aren't safe to go, okay, and just sit there and laugh and breathe and be goofy sometimes, like, and your guard is constantly up, you're constantly stressed. Like, it's stressful, you know?
It's so true. Yeah.
And that's for anybody,
Yeah.
guys or girls. Like, it's not fun to be around a girl that's just stiff, that doesn't want to let you laugh, that can't have a good time, that's like mad about everything. That's not fun either.
Yeah.
But
It's
again,
not.
it feels unsafe to be yourself,
Right.
right?
I
So
agree. I think even from a guy's perspective, like the whole nice guy thing, like a nice girl thing, and
Yeah.
the whole playfulness thing and all that, like it's somewhat similar for us too. Like I dated this girl in college, and my roommate, like I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. Like, this girl was so pretty, and she was so nice. Like, usually you never find that. You never
Right, right.
you find one or the other, but you never find, you know, it's kind of like the joke with guys, but like but she was like literally both. She was so sweet, so nice, and she would do, and at the time I was in Cape.
Oh,
When I
nice,
was in
yeah.
college, she was here, but she would come down and visit me, and we would like have the best time. And she would leave, and my roommate's like, dude, like, you're so lucky. I was like, I don't know if I'm into this girl. And he's like, what is wrong with you? I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know. I cannot figure it out. I was like, I don't know why. And it literally came down. I didn't realize until after we had, you know, broke up. But I was just like, she was so nice that like she had no boundaries, and
Yeah.
she was kind of a pushover, and that wasn't really attractive to me. That like I kind of like a woman who's playful and like can banter
Yeah.
a little bit, you know,
Put you in
like
your place once in a while.
right.
I agree.
But that's really interesting. Do you mind if we kind of get back to more like the darker side of relationships?
Yeah.
'Cause I know that's more your expertise.
I want to say something too about the
Yeah.
nice thing that I think is like a good point, is that another reason why I think we're unattracted to nice people is because we never really know who they are. Because when someone's overly nice and they don't have boundaries, and it's like they're constantly adapting to who you think they should be. And they're
Yeah,
like
that's not
feeling it.
good.
Do you know what I mean?
I totally
Like
yeah.
and you're going, who are you? Like, no, don't be who I think you should be. I want to like the person that's there, not this nice guy, nice girl persona that I'm not even sure who you are. Like they don't have a sense of who they are, you know? And so it's like, it's confusing almost. And you find yourself like, why am I not attracted to this person? They're so nice. They're so great. They'll do anything for me. They like all the same things I like. But then at some point you go, oh, because they don't have an identity for themselves. They're being everything they think I want them to be, but I don't want them to be who I think they should be. I want them to be who they are, you know?
Which probably boils down to safety.
Exactly.
Right? Because
yeah,
like,
because then there's like they're wearing
Yeah.
a mask almost,
Right.
right? They're like, yeah.
it's
Anyway,
like you fully don't know who they are, so it's like they're so
Because they
nice.
don't.
Right.
because they'll be whatever you want. They'll do whatever you want. They'll say whatever you want. They'll portray whatever you want. They'll go wherever you want. It's like who's the person there? Like who's actually in
Yeah.
there? You know?
And do you think that like, because I'm going back to like my dating years and
Yeah.
like when we were in college and high school, and like it was so funny, but like I would always be out with my friends and like we would go up and like talk to a girl, and like I would be like, they'd be like, so what happened? I was like, I don't know, dude. Like she wouldn't give me the time of day. Well, what'd you say? I was like, I don't know. I was like really, really nice to her. And then you go look, you know, and like this chump comes up who's just like a total dick. And but he's confident and he just like doesn't care.
But
He's
he
like,
knows who he is, and
he
he
knows
doesn't
who
care.
he is. And
Yeah.
I'm like, and I used to get like, before I understood this, I'd be like, I don't understand why these girls like these jackasses. Like, I'm so nice. But you like totally like,
It's a masculine thing
it's
to
a
know who
masculine
you are.
thing. Yeah. But I think it takes us a while to, I think some guys never learn that. And I
Yeah.
think some guys do learn it and they change and evolve. But I think one of the most confusing things is that what do I do as a married man to balance both sides of this equation?
Yeah.
Because
you have to choose kindness over niceness. Like, kindness is who you are. Niceness is who you're trying to be.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
yeah,
Like you can feel when someone's kind. Like you can feel when someone's like, I'm going to do the right thing when I'm supposed to do the right thing because I care about other people, versus I'm doing this because it seems like the right thing to do. And I don't want to make anyone upset. And like, there's a huge difference, right?
there's like an agenda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And nobody likes the feeling of an agenda. Like,
Right.
okay,
You sense it. We sense so much more than we realize.
Right.
That's why we're having these conversations. Like, you
Yeah.
know, instinctually, even if you don't know, you do know.
Yeah,
Like,
you do. Yeah.
So,
And sometimes I think in our younger years, we can't put it to words.
mm-hmm.
And I think, to be honest, like this is one of the best interviews I've had on this topic because you're able to eloquently put it into words that are
Yeah.
so simple and for
Yeah.
us to understand.
Yeah.
For relationships though, let's talk about more like the darker side, because
Okay.
I know like that's like your expertise. You said, I know that once a relationship, you know, crosses, I think, a certain point, I think especially for a woman, once her mind is made up, it's like there's no going back to it. Do you what do you think? I'll ask two questions.
Okay.
Physically and emotionally. I mean, I think physically might be self-explanatory, but what is the line that we cross physically and emotionally that's like, I'm sorry, but there's like no going back now. Like this relationship is now forever changed, and no matter what you do, no matter what we do, this will forever be where we kind of pointed where we changed.
Oof. You know, I wish I had like a concrete answer for that. But it's really complex when you get into like domestic violence, because so many people end up trauma bonded. So they're bonded to the person that is both the person hurting them, but also the only person that can make them feel better. And what I mean by that is like, that's what a trauma bond is. It is like a person that hurts you, but you don't feel better until they come back, right? Like, and when they come back and they're like, I'm sorry, and I shouldn't have done that. You're now trauma bonded because they made you feel better based on what they did to hurt you. Like they gave you that, I should have never done that. You don't deserve that. So you're getting the affirmation from the abuser. And that's what a trauma bond basically is like you
never
bond
heard
to
that.
that person because they're giving you the low of lows, but they're also giving you the high of highs.
Oh my
Does that make sense?
It never has until just now because like,
And that's
and
why
I've
they
never heard
stay
that
so
term.
long because
Wow.
and here's the other thing to understand about abusive relationships. They don't ever start abusive. You don't just, I mean, I'm not saying this has never happened, but for the most part, you don't go into a relationship like, oh, they're abusive, but I just want to give them a shot. I just want to see. Like that doesn't.
They've only beaten up like 7, not 8. So,
They have 3 missing ex-wives, but you don't know. Like I want to give them a chance. That's not how it works, right? You go into a relationship, and this person shows you the absolute best of them, and they lay it on thick. And when you're naive and you don't know better, you see that, and you're like, wow. Like, I just met the love of my life, and they think I'm the best thing that's ever lived. And they're so amazing. They're so nice. They're so caring and thoughtful and consistent. And, but they're also really masculine, and they're also like sweet. And like, you think they're amazing. They're different than anything you've ever experienced. And then the abuse starts with verbal cues, which goes back to what we were talking about with why those little cuts matter in a relationship. Because that verbal cue is a sign that's hinting that something's not right here. Because a loving, healthy, whole person that's self-aware doesn't say, things that would purposely hurt you just for the sake of hurting you. And then manipulation starts, but it's slow. It's like it's a progression into an abusive relationship until one day. Usually when the physical abuse starts is when the person starts to pick up on the emotional abuse and the mental abuse and the control and all these other little things, and they start to question it. That's when the physical abuse usually starts in a relationship, and that can vary. Like I have known women that were with someone for 4 years, married for 2 when the physical abuse started, because that was the point in the relationship where they started to question it. Where they started to go, no, you can't talk to me like that. And no, this isn't acceptable behavior. No, I'm not going to put up with that, or I'm going to leave. That's when the physical abuse usually starts in a relationship. And it can be within 3 months, but it can also be within 8 years. But they do that because it's like, that's their last resort. Okay, this person sees what I'm doing. They are aware of how I'm behaving. They know that I'm like, manipulating and gaslighting and, controlling, and they're holding up boundaries, and that's not acceptable here. I'm going to lose control of this if I don't start physically abusing this person now. And and sometimes, not always, but the physical abuse will start off slow. It'll be like a pinch, a really hard pinch of no, that's not going to happen. Or they'll put their hand on your throat and they'll do it kind of hard where you're going, what was that? And then I'm just joking. I'm just playing with you. Like a lot of the times it starts off, it's so insidious and so almost undetectable at times that by the time they're physically abusing you for real, you honestly are surprised. You're honestly like, I didn't see that coming. And it truly is like a shock. Because if you're naive and you don't know what the signs are, right? If you know the signs, you can see that like pinching a woman really, really hard, that's a weird thing to do. That's not something that someone that's healthy, happy, and whole does, right? They don't want to hurt you. They want to protect you. Like a healthy man protects. They don't abuse, right? And so it's like such a progression into it that that's what's so scary about it, I think.
That's fascinating. Fascinating meaning like, because you would think like, first of all, the trauma bond, I've never heard that term. But
and you
like,
always end up trauma bonded before the abuse really even starts.
Really?
I mean, the physical abuse. Yeah.
But the interesting thing about that is like for as long as I can remember, like, because I was in abusive relationships with either my mom or guys that she dated. I was only in one relationship where I would say verbally, right, where I was just emasculated, and I let it happen. It was like super early on. Actually, it was the same girl that slept with my neighbor in college. So,
imagine that.
and she wanted to get back together, and I was like, no. But the trauma bond thing is fascinating because like as many people as you talk to be like, she's being beaten. Why does she keep going back? That's the weirdest, dumbest thing ever. But I think the trauma bond thing, like when you described it, it's the lowest of lows. It's also the same person that gives you the highest of the highs. And especially when they come back and they try to
You
repair.
want the person you thought they were
Yeah.
so desperately and so badly that if they even show you a glimpse of that person again, especially women, because women tend to be more empathetic, they immediately go, oh, there they are. That is really who they are. They are actually that good person that I fell in love with. This other thing is, that's not them. They don't want to be that way. They don't like to be that way. Like, you convince yourself that the abuse isn't really who they are, that they can't help it, and you over empathize and sympathize for them. And abusers really play on that big time. They will play on a woman's empathy like a violin. Like, they know how to pull it. That's why they always come back with I'm so sorry. I don't know why I did that. And they always have a story too. I was just, when I was a kid, like, this happened. And that's not to say those things probably aren't true, but it doesn't
make it okay.
Yeah, it doesn't make it okay. And I don't care who you are, right from wrong. I don't care what anyone says. A man knows that hitting a woman is wrong. Even if they defend someone else, even if they've done it, they still know that, like, anytime you abuse or are violent towards something that isn't strong enough to even defend itself against you, that's wrong. Animal, human, child, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So with the abuse and that kind of thing, like, where, like, so you're explaining like the trauma bond, and the story I'm telling myself is that's got to be a really hard loop to get out of. Like,
well, you know
it's
how they
almost
say, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I just think, like, if I put myself in that position, like, if I put myself like in a female's perspective and position in a relationship, even from a man's perspective, it's almost like, how do I let myself out of that? Like, I remember, like I said, my experience was not even close to yours. It was just a toxic relationship where I put up with too much. But at the same time, like, I didn't want her to go.
Right.
It's a funny thing is, looking back on it even now, is like, I even told myself it's going to take something horrific for us to break up, because I just can't do it on the terms that are now here. But when she slept with somebody else, I was like, that's my golden ticket.
Right.
Out, but how do you break that loop?
Well, I think this is why it's so important. I'm so glad that I learned this when I spent the last year or so healing, is that you have to know what you want in a relationship, what you need in a relationship, and what you deserve. Like, no matter what. That is so, so important, because if you just go into a relationship like, I don't know what I want, I don't know what I need, you are so much more accepting of unacceptable behavior, because you don't even have like a goalpost for yourself of what you deserve.
So true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that explains why you're like, well, that wasn't okay, but... And then finally, the final straw for you was her cheating on you. But it's like, if you had gone into that relationship, like, these are the things that are unacceptable for me, and these are the things that I want, these are the things that I need, then you can look at that and go, this relationship is none of those things. What am I doing here? Versus just going in and, like, you're just feeling it out and kind of going with the flow, and, like, there's no real direction for the relationship. There's no real direction for you. You're kind of accepting, allowing, and inviting anything because you don't know. Like, so I think that's really important. Having that set, like, I deserve to be treated with respect, and if I'm not, I'll walk away from this. I deserve to have someone emotionally available, and if they can't be that, it doesn't mean I dislike them, but I'm going to walk away from this. I deserve someone that is consistently, reaching out to me and wants to be in my life, and if that's not them, doesn't make them a bad person. I'm just going to walk away from this because that's what I need. And it makes it so much easier to walk away from relationships when you're not having your needs met, when you know what they are. Because then it's not so black and white. You're not like, oh, they're a horrible person because they didn't do this, and now I have to leave because they've cheated on me, right? It doesn't even have to get to that. It can be 2 months in and you're going, I like this person, they're great, but these are all the needs that I have. These are all the wants that I have, and none of those things are being fulfilled here. And so realistically, you can look at that and go, this isn't going to work. Even if I like this person a lot, even if I'm really physically attracted to them, if they aren't emotionally available and communication is like the number one thing I need, this won't work. It'll be a struggle the whole time. Is it worth it? No, not really. Not really. So I think that's super important.
Did you go through a process of really understanding what your needs were? Because I think most people, like, do you think most people actually just go into a relationship, like you said, and then that relationship will come to an end and they just go on to the next one and they never take, I know before we recorded today, you said like, I've taken a year and I'm single. And the story I'm telling myself is perhaps one of the reasons you did that, because that was an intentional decision, correct? Is to really maybe just get crystal clear on like, what do I want? Why do I want it? Like, but I am curious, like, how do you understand, like, if you're going to take a year off of relationships and just take that hiatus, like, how do you feel like you're ever stuck in limbo? You're like, okay, I know I don't want that. Like, I've had all this, but like, and I'm pretty sure I want this stuff, but do you ever really fully know what it is you want until you go test it on the next relationship? Or do you think that this year you've taken has gotten you very clear on that?
Oh, I know.
Okay.
100% totally clear. Like, but having experienced the worst of the worst too, that also helps you get really clear. Because I know things to look out for too, right? And that's another part of it, like knowing what you want and need, but also knowing the signs that someone's not healthy at all are really important, you know? Even in my marriage, like I have to say, like, that was probably one of the downfalls of my marriage. I genuinely didn't know what I needed. I think a lot, and I don't know about men, but I think a lot of women, they go into relationships and their want and need in their mind is, I just want to get married one day. I just want to have kids one day. Like, the goalpost is always something that just will naturally happen regardless. It's not about what my heart needs. It's not about what my soul needs. It's not about what my mind needs. It's not about, you're not thinking about that. You're thinking about, I want to be chosen and I want to get married and I want to have kids. You're not thinking like, I actually need a really good communicator. I actually need someone who doesn't yell at me, because knowing yourself makes it so much simpler. Knowing, like, for me, anger repels me. And even if it's not directed at me, if a man is really angry, it could be, something that has nothing to do with me. I don't want to be in that room. I'm going to find my way outside of that room and I'm going to let that person do what they got to do. It repels me. So now I know that if I'm in a relationship with someone that has anger problems, even if he's never directly mean to me, that's not going to work. That's not going to work unless that person is like hyper aware of that and truly, truly working on it and going, okay, I'm working on this. I'm in therapy. I'm getting help. I'm healing that part of me. But even then, like, it doesn't align. It doesn't make sense, right? Like, if you know yourself, then you know what you need. If you know yourself, you know what you want. Like, wants and needs are two different things, right? Like, I want a guy that's over 6 feet, sure. No, not really. I don't care about that. But, the typical things. I want a guy with tattoos, yes, but I'll survive if they don't have any, But it's very different than, I need someone who's emotionally stable, and I need someone who's emotionally available, and I need someone that isn't overly critical. Like, those are needs. I have to have that, or I won't thrive in the relationship at all. And if one person's not thriving in the relationship, the other person won't be either,
That makes total sense. Do you ever feel like, Jessica and I were just having this conversation not too long ago, like, what would you do if we didn't work out and we were both single? And I told her, I was like, I would probably be one of those people that would just, like, I think a date would last 5 minutes. I mean, like, not kidding. Like we'd sit down and we would just, like, I think we would know within a few minutes, like, do we even have any chemistry? Because if we don't, like, what are we doing? Let's just go.
You know what? This was so good. You have a good night and I'll never see you again, but I wish you the best. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, so like, one of the things that I've learned that, like, I need is, I want someone who physical fitness is a huge top priority for them. And it has actually really not much to do with how they look physically.
Yeah.
Because I don't mind a woman who is fit, but I also don't mind a woman who is, not fit, or like a bit on the thicker side, or whatever you want to say. But what I am really interested in is the mental and emotional results of someone who just,
it makes you more
fitness.
confident.
Makes you more confident. I think it's like they have more of a growth mindset. They don't mind being uncomfortable. It's I think they can even handle challenge a little bit better because they're used to things. It's resistance. It's something that's kind of like you have to fight for. It's not something that's comfortable. But I kind of like that. But I think communication by far is something so important. But there's one other thing that I want to ask you about, and that's friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at the end of the day, like, yes, we're a couple. Yes, we're intimate. Yes, we expect certain things from an intimate relationship. But I'm really curious from a perspective from an intimate relationship. Like, what do you look for in a man intimacy wise, but he's also your friend? Like, you also just do life with this guy. Like, at the end of the day, like, yes, we have an intimate relationship, but at the end of the day, like, this dude is like my favorite person.
I would say, so when you're aligned with someone, you are also just more compatible. And what I mean by that is, like, I didn't realize how important compatibility was. For most of my life, I didn't think compatibility mattered. I was always like the opposites attract kind of a gal. And it is, when you think about it, how many friendships do you have with people that you have nothing in common with?
Not many.
Probably not very many. Yeah. And there's a reason for that. And when you really think about that, that's why it's so important in your romantic relationship too, that like you can look at that person and you can say, even if the romance is gone for a while, I still enjoy you. I still enjoy going to do these things that we both like to do together. Like, I still think you're the greatest person ever. If you don't respect who someone is, you can't even be friends with them, right? If you don't have anything in common with them, it's hard to be friends with them because it's like, well, when you're struggling, the relationship struggling, you're like, well, I like to read, but she likes to go watch movies. So she's at the movie theater and I'm here reading, because you don't have that in common. It's like having those commonalities brings people together when the romance is fading, right? And then the romance, like that part can bring you back together too. But like for me specifically, I want to know that this is someone that is on a similar path as me, that I'm going to respect and honor and think to myself, I would think highly of them in or out of a relationship with them. Even if we weren't together, I would look at that person and be like, wow, that's a really incredible man. I really have a lot of respect for that man. Like, I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody that I don't feel that way about. Mm-hmm. That's like so important to me. And I also want to be with someone, again, back to safety, but just that I can look at their life and go, the way they treat people makes me want to be good to them. Mm-hmm. Like, and I want someone that we do have compatibility. Like, we are compatible. Like, we do have friendship. We can laugh together. We can play together. We can, go do new things together that we both enjoy, or at the very least be both open-minded to different things, mm-hmm. Does that answer your question, or was it more of like a...
And then some.
Yeah.
Especially the part where... because like we're like maybe romance gets stagnant, or like Jess and I, like one thing I've noticed about our, like, so we have a date every Friday that we go out, and the thing that we always do is we always do something of common interest. Mm-hmm. Like we'll do indoor rock climbing, or we'll go paint somewhere, or we'll go hike somewhere. We'll do something that we share a common interest. And one thing that I noticed when we do a common interest that I would do with like a friend of mine, those intimate feelings and that connection just kind of blossoms because we're doing that thing together, even though the thing itself isn't like meant to be intimate, it makes it intimate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because when you're enjoying life and that person's here too enjoying life, like you bond. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like looking at your person and they're having a great time and you're having, like, you're bonding with them in a way that you couldn't if you didn't have anything in common. Like, I think probably the worst relationships I've ever had were the ones that I went in head first of like, this is so romantic and this is, you're like swept off your feet and there's so much, kissing and all of these things, but then there's nothing else. And the second that like gets like there's turmoil in that area, everything falls apart because you have nothing to fall back on.
Nothing else, yeah.
Right? And so that's why I think compatibility is so important. I didn't think that when I was young, but I absolutely do now.
Yeah.
Even just mission, like like your drive, like mm-hmm. say you're driven, a man is driven and they're like, I want to be a motivational speaker. I want to travel the world and help people. That to me is really important because that's what I want to do. Right. And imagine like how many possibilities are there when two people have like the same goal in mind, right?
Yeah, I mean it's like the thing that connects
Yeah.
you for
And
sure.
I think we often we jump into relationships that seem fun or that we're really attracted to without ever actually thinking about the longevity of like, would this actually work without it being like horrifically complicated and hard?
Right.
Because life's so short. Like, it does matter. Like, the person you choose does matter. Like, and having nothing in common and you're constantly resentful, like, yes, you can work through anything. I do believe that you can work through anything, but by God, don't you want to enjoy it too, like along the way? Because it's going to get hard no matter what. You're going to have seasons in every relationship where you're struggling, no matter what. But if you have the friendship too, you fall on that when you have to, right?
You do. Yeah.
Like that becomes the thing that keeps you together despite. So I just think that's really important.
I agree with you. And going back to like, not to get too philosophical, but life is too short.
It is.
Like it really is. Like, I was telling you that this is my last year, my 40s. I'll be 50 next summer. And I'm like, I'm having these different, like just perspectives on just things. And I'm like, holy crap. Like Jessica was talking about how her college roommate, she's like, yeah, like, she's going down to Cape to show Corbin, her son, Cape. And I'm like, he's in college. Like, I remember when he was born. I remember we were there.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
how is it? We already have.
Like, no, that was last year. We were.
And I was looking at my 18-year-old. I was like, dude, I literally remember like it was yesterday being your age. And
Yeah.
I was like, what's really freaky is, you're getting ready to go to college or whatever it is you're going to do. I was like, what's really scary? I was like, you see these like chapters that happen in your life. Like suddenly you have a kid and your friends have a kid. And suddenly your friends who have kids, now their kids are going to college. And you're like, holy crap. Like I remember when we were friends in college. And I'm like, yeah. But, life is way too short to have, I think, it's way too short not to have an extraordinary relationship with your wife and your husband. I do want to ask you one other question, then I want to get to what you do. A big theme of this has been safety, and I am so glad that this is what you've talked about. We've talked about safety within the intimate relationship. Mm-hmm. I want you to talk about, what does it mean? What does it feel like to feel safe with a man who's a dad to your kids? Like, what do you see that's like super attractive for your husband to be doing with your kids? And I also want you to talk about things that are not attractive.
First of all, being with someone who likes being around their own kids. And I know that's like, you would think that would just be an obvious answer, but I've seen it. I've seen so many couples where it's like the dad, they're constantly like begging, will you please be home for dinner? Can you please like take, our kids to go do something, where it's like the dad's there, but not there. Like they're not active in their kid's life at all. And everything's always the mom. The mom's taking them to soccer. The mom's taking them to their friends. The mom's picking them up from school. The mom's dropping them off at school. The mom's the one taking them to the doctor's office. The mom's the one taking them to the movies with their friends. Like, where the dad is just like, yo, you've got all of this. And they just are kind of in the house, right? That's so unattractive, because it's like, why did you want kids if you don't want to be involved with them? Right? And then the woman feels, that's another going back to the safety. She's like, you don't even care if your kids exist. So they don't feel safe with you, that's for sure. And they're never going to go to you for anything because you're never there. Right. Right? So if she can see that like the kids don't feel safe with their dad, she doesn't feel safe with him anymore either. And showing initiative of like, I am really glad we had kids. I am excited to see my kids. I might need my 30-minute shower, but I'm going to come out here and I'm going to roll on the floor and we're going to wrestle and we're going to do all these things. Seeing that they enjoy their kids being alive is like the most heartwarming, beautiful, and like bonding thing for a woman. Like to see the father of their children enjoy being a father is so attractive, and it's so safe. And it just is like a confirmation that I chose the right person. Like I chose the right person. Like not only does he love me, but he loves our kids, and they get to feel safe with him. And that is just, that takes it over the top. And those are the couples that I think do the best. Yeah. I think those are the happiest couples, because a woman naturally wants to give. Right. Right. She naturally does. And so when and this could be anybody, but when you're loving on someone's kids, they like you more. Yeah. Instinctually. Like when someone comes and says, your son is just such a sweet kid, and like you instantly like them, right?
Yeah, I was like, oh, I love you.
You
Like,
instantly
yeah.
like them. I don't
Yeah.
care who they are. They could be the worst person on the planet, but if they are if nice about your kids and show attention to your kids and are, you see that makes you feel so bonded to them. It's the same with parenting and like being in a relationship. Like seeing that your partner really loves their kids is so attractive. It's so attractive.
Right.
And it makes you want to
Yeah.
give to them, right?
I can definitely see that. And it's again like the safety aspect of it. And I think that for some of us, like that's being while we all want to be good dads, all of us want to be good dads.
Yeah.
But we don't understand, I don't think, from a woman's perspective, like, well, why is that attractive? You know, like, well, why does that make me actually feel safe? And but that makes total sense. What you do though, so tell me about that. And I mean, you've been in a traumatic relationship.
Yeah.
You speak on this. You help people with it, which, by the way, this has been one of the most informative podcasts I've done on everything we've talked about.
Good.
But I think that this is something really triggering for people to hear about, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you get that a lot. Like, wow, this, whatever she just said, or that topic, that's
I
heavy.
trigger people constantly.
I'm sure you do.
I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of men that don't like me that much. Like, I don't know if you know who Bradley is.
Of course, I know who Dropping
okay.
Bombs Bradley is. I've been on his podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have too. I love
Yeah.
Brad.
That's
but
where I saw you. Holy crap! Because when I saw you, I was like, I know I've seen her. I just don't know where. But
Yeah.
now I know where I've seen you.
I love him.
But yeah, that is crazy. Okay.
So I triggered
Finally.
his demographic. They're not my fan. They don't like me very
God.
much
Well,
at all.
So, oh my God, it's so
And
funny.
it's so funny because he and I actually have a lot of very similar beliefs, and
Yeah.
especially with like family and like relationships. But I guess my approach
his
is
audience-
triggering.
Oh my God, well, his audience is so polarizing.
Oh,
They are. So like when I was on his show, I talked about like, he's like, how did Dad Edge get started? You know how he was like,
Yeah.
how did Dad Edge get started?
we're gonna take that clip and send it to Brad immediately.
Yeah. Or he's more like,
Yeah.
how did Dad Edge get started? Right. But no, he, I told him, I shared this story, like my 16-year-old, like, I mean, talk about on safety. Like I made a promise to myself when I became a dad, I'm never going to hit my kids. And Dad Edge got started because I spanked my 4-year-old who's 16 now. And he put that one clip on his Instagram, and I was like, oh wow. I was like, I got so many followers that day, but then I looked at the clip and I was like, I mean, his audience, like,
Tore you apart?
I mean, they just tore me apart.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
oh, great. So you're a drunk abuser. Like, I'm like, oh my God. There was like 140 comments like that. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God. And I went to one of my buddies and I'm like, dude, I was like, what the hell's, he's like, it's Bradley's. It's like they're very polarized. Like they just
And
want
that's
to
why
throw
it
eggs
works.
at you. Yeah.
That's why it works
does.
for him.
But anyway, go ahead with what you were saying.
No, yeah, same.
Yeah.
It is very triggering. Like, first of all, talking about domestic violence or sexual assault is just hard.
It is.
Whether
yeah.
you're a victim or you've never experienced it, it is a hard thing to talk about. It's uncomfortable.
Right.
Both of those things are very intimate conversations, right? And very intimate things that happen. Like it's so deeply personal that it is hard for people to talk about. Victims, because it brings about shame when they haven't like fully healed from it, and people that haven't experienced because it's just uncomfortable, right? And we avoid uncomfortable topics. That's what we do. Except for politics, unfortunately, which I wish we'd avoid a little bit more. But that's a story for another day.
I'm so glad the election's over.
Thank God, like a breath of fresh air to be just done with it all. But yeah, it's hard for people to talk about. And so I started talking about it for that reason, because I felt like I had nowhere to go. Like, and I thought to myself, maybe if I just start talking about it, getting it out, and like explaining my own experience and what I felt like I was learning in the process, because I think that's really important, which is the whole point of my platform. It's not just to talk about domestic violence and sexual assault. It's to heal from it. It's to move past it. It's to have a life again after, because I don't want anyone to ever have to stay in that dark place. It's a horrible place to be in, and you'll stay there if you don't have the tools and the knowledge and the will to rebuild your life and find yourself again. So that's why I've created my platform, is just to one, be vulnerable enough to show that like it's okay No, not everyone's going to like it. Yes, I get weird comments. I get hateful comments. Yes, those things happen, but that's okay. And the more that we open up about topics like this, the easier it gets to talk about. The easier it gets to talk about, the more awareness it brings. And the more awareness it brings, the more like we are open, like looking for it. You know what I mean? And then it helps women and men. See, he knows.
Yes, he likes you.
It helps men and women too, like get really honest with themselves, even in relationships. I don't think that every single abuser is just this horrific, awful, sociopathic monster. I don't think that. I think some of them are really, really deeply insecure, wounded men that have never done any of the healing work that's required. And they become something that they don't even want to be, you know? And that's not to say that I like that I have empathy for that. I do in a sense, but like, I think that if we talked about it more men would look at themselves and go, maybe when I act like that, that's not okay.
So it sounds like you don't have empathy or like tolerance for the action, but maybe for the man who's like really deep down who just hasn't done the work yet.
Depending on the situation, because every situation is different. There are some truly sociopathic, like narcissistic men that really don't care, that destroy everyone in their lives. And they'll destroy everyone, men, women, you know, in between, they don't care. But I do think, unfortunately, a lot of abusers were abused themselves. I think a lot of abusers were in horrifically toxic environments growing up, and they never saw anything different. And so even though they know deep down it's probably wrong, there's a part of them that is so normalized from it that they don't have that moral like push to not do it.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it acceptable, doesn't make it okay. But talking about this more, getting it out there more, saying, hey, like, this is an issue and it's not okay, and this is the impact that it has on victims, and this is how it destroys their lives. Like, my hope is that it will make men more aware of it, to look and evaluate anything within them that has a tendency to be violent, you know? And men are naturally, like, if you're a masculine, fit, healthy man, you have that thing in you, right? Like you love boxing, you love sports where you're like getting in there and getting all that aggression out. Like that's a part of you and you can't help that. That's just biological, right? But when you don't have the right facility for that and the right place to put that, it can very easily become a toxic, abusive relationship, you know? So I just think it's important.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you have a lot of guys that reach out to you for help, or do you have mostly women?
It's about 80% women.
Okay.
But there is about 20% men like that reach out to me consistently.
And is it men who are being abused, or is it men who are abusers?
It's mostly men that are being abused. But there's been a few that were abusers too, that were like, I lost this girl because of this. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you other than therapy. Like, you got to get in therapy.
Wow.
You know, like you lost her. She's gone. She's not coming back. And I don't have empathy for that, but I do have empathy for you as a human just because God loves you. So I do too. But like, get in therapy. Like, take a look in the mirror. Like, change.
Is this hard work for you to do? Like when tell me about that.
It's rough.
Yeah.
Like, I do it anyway. I've thought about quitting a few times now. Like, there have been podcasts that I have done where the comment section almost like just made me lose faith in humanity as a whole. Like, there, even like in my own story, sometimes just people going, well, she should have known better, or, well, she probably deserved it, or, well, she probably triggered him, or what. Like, it's scary how many, and I say this not casting blame on men as a whole, because that's another part of what I'm doing and trying to like eradicate entirely. But it is scary how many men see violent behavior as acceptable, even towards women. You would be surprised, or at least see that it's justified in certain circumstances, right? Like, I'm not saying a man shouldn't defend himself. If a woman's punching you in the face, you have the right to defend yourself and get out of that situation. Should you punch her back? Probably not, but I would almost understand in a way, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of men justify abusive behavior, and I don't know why that is. And so that's scary, and it's disheartening. And the silence of good men is really disheartening a lot of the times too. Like when you see these horrific comments being made and there is not a single man chiming in at all. Like you see women, that's you're wrong. That's not acceptable. Like defending other women. You very rarely see good men who I know don't believe in it or think it's okay defending it, like defending women. And that is always like, it's hard for me, but I know that's not the intention. I just think it's not talked about very often. So it's like, and it's hard to talk about, and it's hard. You don't want to be in those conversations. Nobody does. But we as women, collectively, I think healing will happen when we start seeing men take a stand for us too, and protecting us too, and drowning out the noise of all those guys that act like it's okay and justifiable. Like one of my favorite quotes is from Martin Luther King, where he said what did he say? It wasn't the words of our enemies that hurt. It was the silence of our friends. That is one of like the most powerful quotes ever. And it's so true in life too, right?
So, yeah. That's
and that may not be the exact quote verbatim, but it's close. But that's
close,
true.
Yeah.
Like women heal when they encounter healthy men. And I think that's like the answer. Like it's giving women the signs of unhealthy men, but also teaching men to heal and be accountable and seeing that it is a problem, even if they're not abusive, but protecting those who are being abused. And I think a lot of men have really good hearts and good intentions. They just don't know how to like be present in those conversations.
Yeah. Wow. You have dropped, I mean, going back to Brett, you've dropped some bombs. No, seriously, this has been so good. I mean, we've gone in so many different, I think, critical, good directions here. If you were to give, I'm going to ask you two-part question.
Okay.
If you were to give the men and women out there advice on how we can navigate through relationships. So I want you to talk to like the women who listen to the show, even though it's minimal. But really also the second part of the question is I just want you to talk to the guys.
Okay.
Like if you could do these things or not do these things, that you might be doing in your relationship that may or may not be on your radar, I would love for you to just share some insights there on like from a couple perspective. So speak to some of the women in the couples, but also speak to just the men.
Well, I would say for women to like I said, know the signs of abuse so that you know what to look for. And that you can remove yourself from a situation before it ever gets to the point where you're trauma bonded, and be willing to walk away without having to question it. Like if it looks weird, it sounds weird, and it feels weird, it is, walk away. But also remember, like I think it's so important for women to understand not all men are bad. There actually are really good, healthy men out there, and it's so divisive when we paint one of the things that I've been seeing, like especially with things like the 4B movement coming into play, is it's like this idea that if one man is bad, they all are. And don't get me wrong, I see it more than just about anybody, how many are truly like okay with violence. And it is scary. It is so scary, but I also know so many good men. And so I hate that narrative that all men are bad, that all men are evil, that all men are using you, that all men just want something, that all men are going to hurt you. Like, I don't like that narrative because it just divides us. And we need each other. Men and women need each other. Like, we do better together, So I think for women is knowing the signs so that you can go into relationships and know what to look for and know whether you're going down a path with someone who's healthy or not, And so you're not constantly like me ending up in abusive relationships because either you're seeing the signs and ignoring them or you don't know they're there at all. And then you just think every guy's bad, And I think for men, going into relationships and understanding that safety is a priority for her, do everything, say everything, not like on eggshells, but with her safety and her heart and mind, because that is the foundation that she needs to open up to you and be receptive to you. And if you want a woman that's excited to see you and happy to see you and truly respects and honors you, she needs to know that you're her safe place, physically and emotionally. So I think that's really important to like prioritize her safety mentally and emotionally and physically, not just physically. Like a lot of guys think like, well, I'm buff, like she'll never have to worry about, anything. So she's good. No, she needs to emotionally feel that way too and mentally feel that way, like
Yeah.
you're not going to throw jabs at her every
Right.
time she does something you don't like or make her feel like, she's in trouble if,
Yeah. I think that message is, I'm glad you ended off there. I have a client right now that's going through a pretty horrific situation. We're trying to repair his marriage, and he justifies some of his poor behavior early on. He's like, dude, I don't understand this. It's not like I hit her. I was like, you don't need to.
Yeah,
I was like,
hear that all the
there
time.
are other things that hurt and cut deep, and you don't need to lay a hand on her. Like, there are things that you could have said, things that you didn't do, like things that, she had needs and you just never fulfilled them. You never saw her, heard her. And like the safety aspect, I think it really boils down to that.
Yeah. I mean, abuse isn't just hitting someone in the face.
Right.
Abuse is doing anything intentionally that will hurt another person.
Yeah.
That's abuse.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a lot of men are so like black and white, like not, I don't mean that as a judgment, but like if you and your friends say mean things to each other, you think nothing of it. You laugh it off, or you punch each other in the face and then you're done with it and you're best friends in 20 minutes. But like with women, anything you do that is hurtful to her on purpose with the intention of hurting her is abuse.
Just like staring at me like, pet me, right?
So you've been in here for 5 hours.
I know, right? No, I think that information is, well, I know I said I had one last question. I have one more for you though, to build on that. Are you cool with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think in marriages in particular, or just long-term relationships, we get away from these check-ins.
Yeah.
Jess and I, we've been married, like I said, 21 years. Last night, we had a check-in.
Good.
And it was like, we hardly ever fight. Like, it is like once in a blue moon. And yesterday we got in a little argument, and it was kind of funny. My wife still doesn't know this, but she'll know after today. So like my 18-year-old came up to me late last night. We got into a little tiff in the morning. Like I said, never happens. And we kind of like just went our separate ways for the day. Like, we weren't like, the kids are very used to seeing us like very lovey-dovey, affectionate. Like, I compliment her a lot. We joke around a lot. And yesterday we didn't say hardly anything to each other. And so my 18-year-old came up to me last night. He's like, "Are you and Mom okay?" Like, he's like, and I'm like, "No." And he's like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "I said something really dumb, like really dumb this morning." He's like, "Well, you gonna apologize?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I go, "Do you want to do something kind of cool?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, he was sitting right out here on the couch doing his homework, and we were talking over here. And I was like, "I want you to sit on that couch, and I want you to watch conflict resolution." I was like, "So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to start this conversation. We haven't talked all day." And I was like, "And I just want you to take note of how we do this." He's like, "Okay." So, I knew she was pissed, and she had every right to be pissed. And I went in there and I was like, "Hey," I was like, "You still mad at me?" And she looked, and she always just treats me with so much respect, and like never emasculates me or anything like that, or never talks poorly. And she looks at me and she goes, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh shit."
She's like, "Oh damn, I really screwed up."
"Oh damn."
Like,
I was like,
oof.
for her to say that, I was like, okay. I was like, "That's fair." I was like, "What, tell me why, like what happened?" And I was like, "I know what happened. I know what I said, but like tell me what this felt like." And and very respectfully, she was like, "This is what it felt like. This is what you said. This is how it landed for me." And I was like, and I'm sitting there thinking like, I might have given Ethan the wrong conversation to hear, because this is really humbling.
Yeah.
But she did it in just such a beautiful, respectful way. Like, and I was just like, and I just took it all. I was like, "What else? Do you have anything else? Like, let's," she's like, "There are some other things that I'm holding back." She's like, "But I'm not going to tell you about." I was like, "No, please do." I was like, "Tell me." She's like, "You're going to be upset at yourself if I tell you." I was like, "I need to know it." I was like, "I need to know it." I was like, "Because our relationship is not sustainable if you hold it in." Yeah. I was like, "Because it's just going to be a resentment. So just get it out. Just tell me." She's like, "Are you sure you want to hear it?" I'm like, "I'm positive." And she told me, and it was some stuff that was hard to hear. And I was like, but then I filtered it through, like, is she right?
Yes. So important.
Yeah. And and as much as I wanted to, and I was so tempted, and I was like, I just want to I was like, I understand that, but, and I'm sitting there thinking like, I've got an 18-year-old that's taking notes. And I was like, I was like, I don't have an argument for that. I was like, you're 100% right. And I was like, and I'm really sorry. And I felt like shit.
Yeah.
And I kind of like walked away and I started doing dishes. And you want to see something cool? I'll put this in the show notes, but my son texted me this morning because we hadn't heard anything. And he goes, oh crap, I'm late for this podcast. Hang on one second. So I said, hey, did you hear, me and mom make up last night? And he goes, yeah. And he sends me this photo.
Oh.
It's a photo of Jessica. I kind of like took a second because I was like, I felt like just like crap. And I started like doing some dishes and she just came over to me and like grabbed me and hugged me. And I just like kind of like melted. And, but I think it's really important for our kids to see repair.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for our kids to, and just for the relationship too, is being able to, there's got to be boundaries in how we speak to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think there needs to be freedom to say, hey, there are going to be times I'm going to tell you some really hard things.
Yeah.
And I just I need for you to hear them and not be defensive and just understand, like, I'm telling you this because I care about our relationship versus like, I'm not trying to attack you.
That's why communication is so important.
Yeah.
Because when you build that trust with someone, you can say the hard things.
Yeah.
And they can hear you.
Yeah.
Versus defending themselves. But
True.
if you haven't built that foundation of safety, like either way, like the second they hear something hard, it feels like an attack versus like, hey, this is really upsetting me and I'm trying to get closer to you and this is what's in the way, you know? Yeah. I
agree. Well, I want to make sure that the guys can find you and what you do. What's the best place to find you?
So on Instagram, it's Ashley Taylor-Maland on Maland. And same on TikTok. And then on my podcast is coming out this month. It's called This Is Where We Heal. It'll be on all the regular platforms.
Awesome. Yeah.
It'll be amazing. I'm so excited for it. But that, and then I have ashleytaylormaland.com, which we're still working on, but that should be up and running when I send out my podcast too. So
awesome.
Yeah. And again, it's mostly women on my page, but I'm so embracing, like, please, I want healthy men on there. Like, please come and be like a light to these women that's just, they need to see that.
Only if you're healthy.
Yeah. If you're not, get out.
Yeah.
But
if you're not, stop off at the dead edge. We'll get you
healthy.
healthy.
If you haven't been to therapy yet, maybe not, but no, I'm kidding.
Well, this was awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You bet.